In the world of colonial Latin America, status and wealth were everything. Ladies and gentlemen alike strived to dress in the finest silks from Europe and parade around the town flaunting their riches. By the time the Spanish had established themselves in South America, it became difficult to only identify people on their skin color. Interracial mixing had become a part of life, and other means of identification needed to be established. This is where clothing played an integral part in not only the courtly grandeur, but also in the caste system. Racial groups were being categorized not only by skin color, but also by their dressing habits, hairstyle, social behavior, cultural practices, and their eating habits. This preoccupation with stratification through garments was not wholly a new import to Latin America. Previously established civilizations, most significantly the Aztec and Inca, also made use of clothing as a means of demonstrating social status. Often, when examining clothing, the tendency is to focus on the clothing of leaders. To be sure, these garments are generally more colorful, heavily adorned, and visually stimulating. For example, this image of Texcoco ruler Nezahualcóyotl shows him wearing the ceremonial emperor's cloak, characterized by a design called the blue diaper motif. Use of this pattern was limited to those who could demonstrate an ancestral tie to the Toltec dynasty, the Aztec ideal of civilization and means of legitimizing rule. The emperor could give cloaks similar to his own to other descendants, but only his could consist entirely of the design. Still, aesthetic preference cannot eliminate the variety of clothing types present in Aztec society. Variation in clothing style is a primary indicator of one's social class and function. In opposition to the image of the emperor, farmers dressed much more simplistically. Note that the primary color used here is red as opposed to the blue found on the emperor. This red comes from the cochineal beetle, whose dye later becomes heavily imported to Europe. Although it is popular in Spain, its use here indicates that it is less valued in Mesoamerica. Greater stylization is seen in battle dress of warriors. This image from Codex Magliabechiano shows a warrior wearing a jaguar skin, indicating his membership in the Jaguar Society. Although this image depicts a ceremonial event, other images of warriors indicate that such battle dress is standard. His opponent is a captive who will be ritually sacrificed after being defeated. The captive is dressed elaborately in feathers and wears a headdress, indicating his status as a worthy sacrifice to the gods. Incorporation of elements such as animal products is a common way of assigning significance to clothing. Another way is the use of precious stones and metals. Particular stones such as turquoise are reserved for images of the divine and are worn to symbolize them. The pectoral ornament shown below depicts a double-headed serpent possibly associated with Quetzalcoatl. The mask made of a human skull is similarly covered with turquoise and lignite and represents Texcatlipoca, or smoking mirror. Unlike the Aztec Empire, the cold weather along the Andes Mountains in South America has preserved many relics of the Incan Empire. Clothing could easily depict the amount of power or level of position in the Incan society the wearer had. Feathers signified that the wearer was part of the army. Fabrics also defined the station that the wearer was part of. Bat hair was reserved solely for the Inca ruler. Kumpi is a cloth that was a very fine weave. Clothing of such a caliber as these were controlled and distributed by the state. Clothing such as these tunics were placed in warehouses throughout the empire. Soldiers could receive clothes as payments or as rewards. Often armies would take clothing to their enemies in order to gain trust and bring them willfully into the Incan society. Clothing was an important part of any event that happened. Weddings were one of the few times that a girl may get a new set of clothing. People would keep all articles of clothing that they attained throughout their life and would be buried with all of it. Juanita the Ice Maiden was found high in the Andes Mountains. Frozen solid, her clothing was of a high quality because of her significance as a sacrifice to the gods. She was buried along with extra shoes and clothes to grow into in her afterlife. The Lienzo de Tlaxcala was painted and completed in 1560. It was prepared for the Spanish viceroy Luis de Velasco to celebrate the relationship between the Spaniards and the Tlaxcalans. The disparity in wealth and class is evident here. Cortez has access to finer materials than Montezuma, and it is apparent in the picture that he is wearing the best European fabrics. The Indian artist Don Francisco de Orobe painted the mulatto gentlemen of Esmeraldas in 1599. These men are governors of a community off the coast of Ecuador. Their dress is reminiscent of traditional European styles. The bright and vivid colors seen here are common in many portraits of Spanish royalty from the same period. Two cultures come together in the European material and style mixed with the traditional jewelry of their society. This painting is typical of Spanish royalty in the 16th century. The styles of the fabric and overcoat are identical to the previous painting of the mulatto gentleman. This clearly shows the transition that European styles from Spain to the New World. In 1716, the Spanish crown enacted a law that severely restricted the types of fabric and styles of dress that the different classes were allowed to wear. Blacksmiths, tanners, esparto workers, those who work in the spice business, and other people that have similar or even worse jobs, as well as unskilled workers, farm workers, and day laborers, are not allowed to wear clothes made of silk or any other fabric mixed with silk. They are only allowed to wear or bring clothes made of wool, linen, or cotton. Konetsky, 1962. This painting was completed approximately 75 years before the law was created, and the way these slaves are dressed is indicative of their master's social status. Once again, European-style clothing is depicted. All of the images previously shown emphasize the significance of material culture in the form of clothing on societal structure in pre- and post-contact Latin America. Overall, while Spanish colonization introduced new stylistic elements and materials to Latin America, the concept of status display through clothing had been well established centuries before their arrival.